G'day guys, and welcome back to the Daily Discomfort Podcast. I'm your show host, Michael Stone. Thank you for anyone who tuned in to our first episode dropped on Sunday. This will be dropped on the following Sunday. And at this very time that you're listening, or possibly earlier in the day, a few of the boys from the Daily Discomfort Run Club and myself will have run the Gold Coast Marathon. So looking forward to that this weekend, embracing that physical side of discomfort with this one. So I'm sure there'll be some stuff to talk about in a future podcast when it comes to that experience. However, today I want to talk about the origin story of not only myself, but this idea with daily discomfort, which isn't new. People have talked about it before, but this is the brand that I've kind of brought to light with it. Obviously influenced by other ethoses out there from other people over the years and through my own experiences. So that's what I want to discuss a little bit today, and hopefully you can walk away from the podcast today with a better understanding of why this is here and maybe some insights into how you can start to challenge yourself by embracing discomfort in your life. And maybe there's some relatable stories or experiences that can help you through any challenges that you go through, or help to give you a bit of understanding around some of the challenges that you've been through in the past, or what or how you could approach them in future. So let's get stuck in. So where do I start? I've written a few points down. Who am I? What do I do? Why do I do it? If we keep it to basics, I'm a Brisbane-based personal trainer, now yoga teacher, and I coach breathwork. I've been in the fitness industry for nearly 10 years. This is my 10th year now as a personal trainer. And I've always loved fitness, even though I neglected it in my later high school years. Always loved sport from an early age. Was very blessed to have parents that had put me into mainly soccer and swimming, but my dad exposed me to multiple different sports, whether we played recreationally or we just played for club for a little bit. So that was very supportive of my upbringing, and I think where my headspace landed over the years, and I think why I found my love for fitness and exercise again over the years. And it helped me through tough times, and it removed me from a toxic, I'm not going to say a toxic environment, but just a toxic place in my life, not being aligned with who I truly was. And in essence, when we look at that, I think the proof is in the pudding. In a sense of how I've developed over the years, I owe a lot of it to exercise and the discomfort that you can find within training for various sports, or just training in the gym, or getting into running, whatever it may be. I think that's definitely one area of your life that's always going to have a high rate of opportunity or access for you to get into, to test your mettle. And if you're someone like me who wasn't always a wizard with business or academia, but maybe you're more physically able, it's a great way for you to show yourself what you are capable of doing. And one thing that not everyone is aware of, but one thing that you need to acknowledge and be aware of, is that if you haven't got anything in your life to show you competence, what you're actually capable of doing and doing it well, that's going to be a hard way to live. And a lot of people have been brought up, maybe being raised by parents, teachers, people in their lives who told them what they couldn't do and told them how bad of a kid or a person that they were. And when you're constantly bombarded with that, it's nice to know that there's a place for you to show yourself what you're made of and test your mettle through your physical fitness. Like I said, whether that's the gym, running, powerlifting, bodybuilding, if we're talking about the gym, getting into a combat sport, field sports, whatever the sport is, whatever it is for you that shows you what you and your body are capable of doing. So if we track back over the past 10 years being in the fitness industry, obviously very exposed to exercise, there was a few big challenges that I set for myself. I'm not sure what actually triggered this thought. I was obviously in a decent headspace to think about it, but I just set the goals and said, let's get them done, even though one of those took a very long time to do. So there was a powerlifting competition, a bodybuilding competition, and then having a fight in Muay Thai. So the first two I did in 2018. I competed in powerlifting twice, bodybuilding once, and then Muay Thai, the fight, I did not have until 2023. So relative to physical discomfort, these were those big challenges for me. But any other training, that was related to that is a part of that. That's all a part of the process. It's not just doing the competition itself. And each of those modalities both had there's certain challenges to them. We look at the bodybuilding. One of the biggest things, I loved the training, but I hated the dieting. I hated feeling low energy all the time. Powerlifting, loved doing it, but it was scary. It was scary lifting heavy weights at times. At my strongest, I think I squatted as 182 kilos. I deadlifted, it was 200 in competition. There was a 221 time, but it was pretty dog shit. And then fighting, for a kid who didn't grow up fighting, like my brother and I fought growing up, but that probably stopped, around the time of early high school. But someone who had mates who loved to get in fights, but didn't really like fighting himself because he hadn't been taught how to and he was scared to, jumping in a ring was fun, actually. It's daunting, but once you've sparred enough, you kind of just think of it like hard sparring with higher consequences, but they were all good experiences in that essence. So if we bring it back a little bit, why did I want to do those things and why did I get into the fitness industry? As I said, growing up, I always loved fitness. I actually remember studying some sort of personal trainer course from years 10, 11, 12, or maybe it was 11 and 12, but I was literally going to this personal trainer's course through TAFE and I was smoking on my lunch breaks. Like, I was just that much of an idiot. I look back and it's just so silly. So I was still interested in it and I did like sport at school still. I just dropped out of playing soccer and swimming when I was about 14. And the funny thing is, and I think what you'll find for yourself or maybe people you know or maybe you've got younger siblings is, I think once kids lose that sort of direction from sport or maybe academia or they're in the arts, they're play an instrument or they're a dancer, whatever it may be, once you lose that direction and purpose there, that's where stuff starts to go south from a young age. And then when you're older, if you don't have any sort of goals to aim for and nothing to show you that you're making progress, I think that's where things can start to get downhill. I think that's where you start to run into issues, possibly with depression. It's a very intricate subject. I don't really want to talk about mental health too much today, and I'm not an expert on it either, so I'd love to get someone on the podcast in future to discuss that a little bit more. However, looking back to those younger years when I was a teenager, there really was a decline in my mentality after I got out of sport. After I stopped doing things that challenged me on a physical level, and even just dropping my standards when it came to academia. I was a pretty bright kid until I started to drop off. Looking back and looking at report cards now, I dare say there was some issues with ADHD. I'd have to get that diagnosed, so that wouldn't have helped it. But not having the direction and not having standards there and not challenging myself is where I started to dive into the drinking, partying. I say drugs, but I just mean smoking weed. Like, I didn't do a whole lot. It was nothing too crazy back then. And this is where I look again at people at points in their life where they're not coping well, they're not doing well, or maybe they smoke screen themselves to show themselves that they are. They're kind of masking up the reality of what's actually happening. If you're not challenging yourself and you're not bracing discomfort, physical, mental, and just to explain mental, on the side of things where I dropped my standards with academia, I never thought I was going to go to university. When I went to university, that was one of the toughest things that I did in my adult life. I struggled to focus. I struggled to pay attention. I could read a page of something and it just goes straight past me. Like, I don't understand it. But I got myself to the point of completing a 3-year bachelor's degree and getting a relatively high GPA as well. That's one of those mentally challenging tasks for me. So when you listen to this and you think, what does he mean by physical discomfort, mental discomfort, emotional discomfort? Well, if we look at mental discomfort, I look at that as more like problem solving and learning and starting to understand, whereas physical even though it all relates, that's where I start to look at what are you actually challenging your body through physically, through physical fitness, challenging the capabilities of your body through lifting weights, running various sports, and learning new skills. And then when we look at emotional discomfort, that's where we start to lean into, a lot of the times for men who are watching this, and if there's any ladies watching this, it's bottling things up, which you would have heard 100 times before, suppressing emotions and not dealing with them, which again, I'm no guru on, but I think when you start to really gain a sense of self-awareness as a person, this is one of the best things that you can do when it comes to dealing with your emotional health, let's call it, dealing with your emotions and feelings and not masking them up and not looking at physical discomfort like running a marathon or lifting weights, distracting yourself with physical exercise to mask up what you're actually feeling when you're angry or you're sad, but actually dealing with it and overcoming it in a healthy and productive manner. Not saying physical exercise is unproductive, but if you're always just using that as a tool and not dealing with the issue at hand, I don't think that's the best way to do it, and I'll leave that there for now. So, going back and forth here, let's summarize a little bit there and then we can move forward. Kid who loves sport, stopped playing sport, stopped committing himself to academia, went off the rails. Then I got to a point where I had that aha moment, this isn't me, I'm not aligning with my higher self, not that I knew what that was at the time. And that's where I entered the fitness industry. That's where I got into training. I got into studying again, and I started to notice, hey, when I challenge myself and I overcome the challenge, I feel really good. I show myself competence. When I show myself competence that I can do something, I'm more confident that I can do other things. And in its simplest terms, this is probably the underpinning idea of the daily discomfort, is that you need to show yourself what you're capable of doing to understand that you're capable of doing a whole lot more in your life. And when you start to stack up evidence that you've completed different tasks that maybe you didn't think or you did think you could do, but you've got that resume there that you can show yourself anything or that anyone has ever said to you that doubts you, or any self-doubts that you have a solid base of evidence to show the jury and say, here's why you're wrong. And I think that's one of the most powerful points when it comes to the daily discomfort. And when it comes to that mental health or mental wellness aspect of it, is there's a lot of people out there comparing themselves to other people, comparing themselves to maybe a past version of themselves that maybe was doing better. They're living in the past, or they're always fearing the future because they don't think that they're going to be able to handle things. You need to embrace discomfort. You can't run away from it because it's always going to find you. And the part that finds you when you're underprepared is when you're going to crumble. You can tell that I started to really touch on what I mean with this ethos, because I felt that change in my energy there when I'm really talking my truth and why this has come about. So let's sit with this for a bit now and start to get you asking yourself the question, in your life at this point, what challenges, fears, insecurities, and what we can label it all as, what stresses, what discomfort are you avoiding and are you running away from? And what would happen if you started to embrace, maybe not that specifically, that would be absolutely gold, but if you just started to pick certain layers of discomfort, stresses that you could add into your life that you can start dealing with and adapting to over time, starting to build yourself, whether it's in that physical realm, mental realm, or emotional realm, that you can start to create this more resilient version of yourself. So whether that's, if you're not someone currently training, getting into some sort of training, or if you are someone training and you've gotten so comfortable in just going to the gym, you start running, or you go to the MMA gym, you start doing jiu-jitsu or Muay Thai. You're a big burly guy who's lifting in the gym, and you've got these certain views of doing something like yoga, go do it. On that note, there's certain things that people will stop themselves from doing, and they think they're confident, but they don't actually open up the doors to trying new things because they've gotten so secure in that one modality, if we're looking at training, like the gym analogy, like if you're just someone that is training in the gym, but you avoid doing everything else and you're like, hell yeah, I'm great at this. But then you go do a yoga class or you go do some sort of skill and you feel like shit. And then you're like, oh, this isn't for me. It's just showed you that you're not competent at that thing yet. So you're not confident doing it. So you go back to the place where you feel comfortable to avoid this. So the more you can start to bring on things in your life that test you out, take you out of your comfort zone, you then just get to show yourself more and more, hey, I could do this, hey, I could do that. And then as people, when we are more confident, we are more secure. And what tends to happen when we're more secure within ourselves, we are better to the people around us. We're more grounded. Again, another amazing point I think to touch on here is when you build confidence and not a false sense of confidence, you become more grounded in the person that you are and you treat other people better. Think of any time someone has been horrible to you. A lot of the time what happens is that person is trying to defend a very scared version of themselves, often coming from issues or traumas with their inner child. They're projecting that onto someone else. Now, what happens if that person is secure and they do feel safe within themselves, they're confident in themselves, they tend to be a lot nicer and a lot more caring to other people. Now, there's obviously different types of confidence too, because you can have someone who is both competent and confident, but you can also have someone who is confident and incompetent. If you're doing these things, if you're embracing discomfort and challenging yourself over time, you do build a real sense of confidence. It's not false. It's not going to be insecure. You're not going to question it as much. And again, the whole idea with it is that over time, you start to feel better about yourself. And when it comes to mental health, if you're feeling better about yourself, you're confident, problems arise, challenges come up in your life, but you can show yourself, hey, I did this, I overcame this. You become more resilient as a person, and you become more tolerable to stress, to discomfort, in whatever way, shape or form it may present itself. So that's the main gist of the ethos behind the daily discomfort. And with my experience with it over time, you can see I just moved from a point when I was a teenager in early adulthood where I didn't have things challenging me. I didn't have things taking me out of my comfort zone. And I just tried to fit in at that point. But this is also probably the major point in my life where if I had had any mental health challenges, which I don't think was super serious compared to what some other people have to deal with, it was at that point. Depression, anxiety, and a sense of escape, although that's lingered over time, like having to lean on smoking weed or having to binge drink every weekend to feel I need to fit in or to drown out how I'm really feeling, or smoking cigarettes every day. That was the point in my life, and that's because I didn't have all these other habits in there. I didn't have this perspective. Over time, once I gained that, it was because I started to see that the proof was in the pudding. When I challenged myself, when I showed myself I was capable of doing things, that's where I started to feel more confidence, feel more confident. And as a person, I just felt nicer, and I felt like I was nicer to the people around me. I use that word nice sparingly. I just feel like I was a more grounded person within myself, so I could treat the people around me better. On that point, a key takeaway from this video is that if you are the person who just chases physical discomfort, so you're just exercising and you only find yourself happy when you're training or when you're exercising and not in other areas of life, maybe you hate your job, you're not dealing with the relationships in your life, well, these are other things that you have to look at approaching too. If you really want to become the best version of yourself, the best man or woman that you can be, you need to not have this one-limbed approach to it. And that's something I struggled with at the past. I started to use exercise as an escape. It was addictive. It helped me to feel good, but I relied on that. And that's where I started to see, hey, this isn't the way to approach that. I've got to deal with other things. I'm still learning, how to do that all, and I'll continue to for the rest of my life. So let's wrap it up there for today, guys. I hope this made a fair bit of sense to you when it comes to clearing up, again, just the different ways I look at discomfort, and where this came from, truthfully, just from being that more confident version of yourself who's more secure, more grounded, and more resilient and tolerable of stresses in life, so you can overcome the different adversities that are thrown at you that come your way, because you're someone that is okay and you give yourself permission to embrace discomfort, knowing that you can overcome that and adapt to that as well. If you guys have any comments, questions, feedback, leave it in the comment section, I believe, because this will be on YouTube. Still not entirely sure how Spotify works. I'm sure we can interact on there. Otherwise, if you're on my socials and you're enjoying the content, or you've got suggestions for future content, if you know anyone locally that would like to go on the podcast that you feel like would align with what I want to do with the podcast, please let me know, because that's the idea. It's not just always going to be me talking in my apartment, but I've got a proper mic set up. I've got a little bit of lighting, and I'll get proper soft boxes and that set up so we can give you guys the best content possible. Anywho, that is it for today. I will see you guys in the next episode, or on the next YouTube video, or at some point if I know you in person. See you guys.